Welcome back to the last day of our Series 2 week of prayer. This has been a wonderful week. Did any of you draw the fish for the last session? I hope you posted your pictures on our Three Angels for Kids Facebook group page so we can all see them. Today we're going to talk about what it means to stay close to Jesus no matter what. So last time, let's take a look at our text. You know it by heart now. Read it together with me, please, wherever you are. Worship Him who made the heavens, the earth, the seas, and the springs of water. And that's taken from Revelation 14:7, the second part. We've been talking about our Creator God all week, and we've learned some really important words. If we want to appreciate God's beautiful creation, we have to be curious, right? Like Fred Urquhart. There are so many amazing things God has made, and we don't want to forget to look at them and notice all the amazing details and find out everything we can about God's created things. And we don't just stop there. We don't just say, oh wow, look at that, isn't that amazing? We praise God, we give Him glory for creating it all. And if we really want to take things to the next level, we have to be what? We have to be courageous. It takes courage to be the first one to explore, to discover things that no one else maybe has ever discovered. Like Dr. Penny Patterson. It took courage for her to actually train a gorilla to communicate. I mean, who ever thought you could do that? Sounds a little crazy. It takes a little crazy sometimes to be courageous. And it takes courage to use everything God has given us to truly take things to the next level, to find out about God's amazing creations. And since we're made in the image of our Creator God, we need to be what? That's right, we need to be creative. We're made in God's image. He's a creator, so we need to be creative. God wants us to create. He wants us to stand back when we make something and say, oh, wow, isn't that good? He wants us to be able to solve problems in creative ways and know that we're using everything that He gave us to be creative, just like He is. And just like the pastor who came up with a very creative idea on how to solve a problem and help a little sick boy get his medicine from the other side of a river where there was a war going on. You know, God gave us brains, right? He gave us brains to think and to come up with ideas that maybe nobody has ever thought of before. And what else have we learned this week? We want to be creative, we want to be curious, we want to be courageous. Well, we're talking about using our brains, but what about using our hearts? We need to be what? What's the fourth C? That's right. We need to be caring, because we know that God is caring, and if we're made in His image, we need to be caring too. Just like that little girl who sang to me in my own language and who gave me a gift in Russia of the fish. So we've come down to the last day in our series, and now all of these words are wonderful, and you can try to be courageous and curious and creative and caring, but if you don't have this last thing, it's not going to endure. It's not going to last. You might start out being caring, but sooner or later, you might not keep on keeping on. Sooner or later, you might stop trying. So are you ready for our very last word? Are you trying to guess it now? You need to be committed. What do we mean by committed? If we are committed, we don't give up. I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to take it all the way. I'm not going to give up. I said I'm going to follow Jesus, so I am going to follow Jesus no matter what. I'm not going to give up. I don't care if other kids are making fun of me. I don't care if I'm the only one, because I am committed. Let's think about this word, committed. You know, I remember a student when I was teaching who had a real hard time being committed to a project. I remember one day we were doing our art lessons and she was working away. We were doing paper mache. And she was doing a great job. But the next thing you know, I'd walk by the trash can and I'd say, wait a minute, what's this? What's this? And sure enough, it was Dana's project that she had thrown in the trash. I said, what is your project doing in the trash? Oh, the mouse wasn't coming out just right, so I just threw it away. Oh, the mouse's head wasn't what I liked, so I just threw it away. Wow. Instead of pressing on, fixing her mistake, persisting to the end, remaining committed to the project, she just gave up. We don't want to give up. We want to be committed. Now, what about with your faith and what you believe? How do you commit to that? How do you make sure that you just keep on? Well, you make a decision. You make a decision to follow Jesus. Now, do you know of any examples of people in the Bible who did not commit to what they started? How about Adam and Eve? Wow, they started out pretty good in that beautiful garden, didn't they? But they didn't commit to follow what God had asked of them. He asked them, don't eat of that one tree, and they're going along. And as soon as that old snake tempted them, there you go. They stopped being committed to doing what God had asked them to do. You know, there are many stories of Bible people who did commit to follow Jesus, no matter how hard it was, like Daniel in the lion's den and Esther the brave queen. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a little girl who was very committed. In fact, you know something about this little girl. And no, it's not the little girl with the fish. Do you remember Natasha, who invited me to come to Russia to speak? Well, when I was there, Natasha told me this story about when she was very young. And wow, now I really understood why she was so anxious to have me come and she was so committed. Because you're going to see what a trial she had as a little girl. But she stayed committed to Jesus. Now, Natasha lived in Russia during a time when her country didn't like Christians. Everybody had to follow the rules, and one of those rules was that you had to wear the Star of Lenin on your school uniform every day. You couldn't follow Jesus. You'd be in trouble. Now, little Natasha was very committed to Jesus, and she knew that if she wore that star, it would be like saying she wasn't making Jesus the most important, but that she was following this government leader, Lenin. So every day she'd go to school without that Star of Lenin on her dress, and everyone else would have it on their uniform. And every single day the teacher would send her to the principal's office, and the principal would say, "Did your father and mother tell you not to wear the star?" Ooh, she knew that if she said that, they'd put her father and mother in jail. And she would say, "No, it's I myself." She was committed. So every day at school, her teacher would ask her the same question. "Can I put a star on your dress?" And every single day, Natasha would say, "No, I love my God and I only want to serve my God." Well, one day, Natasha met another little girl at her school, and she noticed that that little girl was not wearing the star. Usually, Natasha thought she was the only one. So she said, "Do you have a Bible at home?" Natasha said. The other little girl was afraid. She said, "What are you talking about?" And Natasha whispered, "We have a Bible at home." Oh, then the other little girl said, "We do too. We do too." So Natasha went home and she told her mom and dad. She said, "I found another little girl at the school. There's another little girl at the school and they have a Bible at their house." So her mom and dad said, "Okay, Natasha, you stay home with your brothers and sisters here and you take care of them and we're going to find out." So they walked 3 miles in the dark because they didn't want anyone to see them. And they found that other family. And Natasha's parents stayed there all night. It was cold in Russia. And they had to walk back in the freezing temperatures by themselves. And Natasha sat there in the house and she remembers the frost on the walls. It was cold at her house. But they were committed. They learned about the seventh-day Sabbath and about worshiping God on His day. And they committed to these new truths that they were learning. And the family decided to be baptized, Natasha and her family. But it's not like here at church. They had to hike into the forest in Siberia in the middle of a cold, cold, windy night. They had to hide. The temperatures were below zero. They had to take the ice off of that water and quickly go in and out to give their lives to Jesus. They were committed. Now, what do you think happened when Natasha went back to school? If you think it was hard for her before, it was really hard for her now. When the teacher heard she was keeping the Sabbath, the teacher said, "What's going on? You weren't doing that last year. Why are you doing it now?" She was very mean to her. And the other students saw how the teacher was treating Natasha, so they really started bullying. And the teacher was bullying and the students. They just treated her terribly because she was standing up for what she believed. They would even beat her, and all the kids would laugh. They would spit at her. They would kick her. And at this time, you had to go to school in Russia 6 days a week. Well, that meant they were expecting Natasha to go to school on the Sabbath. That was a problem. She would not do it because she believed in the Sabbath, in the seventh-day Sabbath. So every single Sabbath, Natasha would be absent, but she would get the work from another student, and she'd have it all done very neatly and correctly in her notebook, and she would bring that notebook into school. But what do you think the teacher would do? The teacher would give her a 0. She would look at all the work that was done correctly, and she would get angry, and she would put 0 on the paper. When Natasha told me that, oh, it still hurts her to this day to think about it. And then the teacher would make Natasha stand in front of the entire school and show the 0. Natasha told me that she was just so embarrassed because she was conscientious. She wanted to do well in school. And everybody laughed at her and spit at her and kicked her. Do you think that stopped Natasha from keeping the Sabbath because of that? Absolutely not. She was committed. She loved Jesus, and she followed the Bible no matter what anybody else was doing. Wow. When she told me that story, I just thought, wow, now I understand why the Bible and everything is so important to her, because look at all she went through. Now, I don't think any of you have to stand in front of the whole school and be laughed at for following Jesus, but I wonder, maybe there are times when it's hard to stay committed to doing what's right. Maybe there are times when other kids actually want you to join in and do things that you know are not right. Does that ever happen? Do kids ever pressure you to do things and you know in your heart that's not what Jesus would want you to do? We're wrapping up our week of prayer right now, and I think it's a good time for all of us to commit to follow Jesus and to do what's right, no matter what anybody else is doing. Can you do that? Are you ready to do that? I know it's not always easy. Even for grown-ups, it's hard. You know, maybe you're a part of a group of kids that like to put other kids down. Maybe these kids aren't very caring. And maybe you're afraid that if you don't join in, they'll put you down too. It takes courage to stand on your own and do what you know in your heart is right. It takes courage to be committed to following Jesus no matter what anybody else is doing. But just like he gave Natasha strength to stand up for what was right when teachers and kids were laughing at her and kicking her and spitting on her, Jesus will give you strength too to do what's right even when it's very, very hard. He will give you strength to stay committed to him. So I'm going to ask you, wherever you are right now watching this, I'm going to ask you to stand up to commit your life to Jesus. Just stand up and tell Jesus that no matter how hard it gets, you will continue to worship him. You'll stay curious and courageous and creative and caring, but most of all, you will stay committed to following Jesus and the truths of the Bible. Will you do that? Will you stand up now? Let's bow our heads and pray together. Dear Jesus, please be with each boy and girl here today. Keep them close to you. Help them to stay committed to follow the Bible truths no matter what anyone else is doing. We love you, Jesus. Amen. Okay, we have one last drawing. Today I thought it would be nice to draw a church to remind us to stay committed to Jesus like Natasha, who followed him even when it was hard. So you ready to do that, to draw a church with me? You guys can do it. I know you can do it. So let's recite our pledge together. Number 1, I will not compare my work with others. Number 2, I will not get frustrated. Number 3, I can always try again later. And number 4, I will have fun. I thought it would be nice if we drew a church today to remind us of how dedicated Natasha was, even as a little girl and even today, that she understands that it's important to worship God and to be committed to do that no matter what. So we're going to start now on our church. We start by actually making like the top of an arrow. And you need to leave some space because we will make a steeple later. But just the top of an arrow, that's all. Not too hard. Now straight down on one side and straight down on the other. Just like an arrow pointing to the sky. Now straight across. Okay, there's the front of your church. Now make a little part of an ellipse. That's going to be the door. See how it's circular? And then follow that line down. So you've got your door, and now make a line down the middle of that. A little doorknob, a little circle, and a little circle. Because a lot of times churches have a fancy door, and then up and around. Same with the windows. They're not like the windows in your house. They're rounded at the top. Okay? And then we're going to follow the line we just made for the arrow, follow it, and in to make the roof. Now straight line across. And make it circular again, and a line down the middle. That kind of looks like a church. You doing okay? Everybody following? Okay, beside it, there's going to be another part of the building, so we're straight down and across. Then again, another part of the building, that's the roof, straight down and across. Okay? That's kind of looking like a church. I'm happy with that. Okay, now just straight line on one side of the roof, straight line on the other side of the roof, across. And a triangle on the top. And you have your steeple. And then just a little rectangle around the side of the steeple there. Okay. Now another window with the rounded top. So we just have some basic shapes here, very basic shapes. Are mine perfect? No, but that's okay. It's making a suggestion of a church, and I think people might know what it is. Now I'm making a tree beside mine. You don't have to. If you want to make a tree, remember that the branches are fatter towards the bottom and thinner towards the top. Okay, you see? How the branches are fatter towards the bottom and they get thinner and thinner and thinner the higher up you go. Okay, so that's the basic tree trunk that I chose to make with mine. And then you can add some kind of leaves. Now, I always make dots. So I'm just going to make some really big dots here for my leaves. And I'm putting some yellow dots, and I will add some other colors to give it some more dimension, but I'm just putting some very big dots here. If you have a crayon, if you're drawing in a marker, you can use your crayon to make some big dots and make different colors to give some depth to the tree. But if you don't want to put a tree next to your church, you don't have to because it's your picture. All right, so I put some green, and I think maybe I'll put some darker green as well. I like to put many different colors. It just looks nice. So I'll put some dots on here, and there's my tree. Maybe it's spring and it's just starting to bud different colors. All right. I hope you like your tree if you're making one. Now I'm going to make my color in my tree trunk, and I'm going to color one side a little darker because there might be a shadow. So Usually one side of a tree or something is a little darker than the other, so I'm going to just darken up that one side. Okay, there's my tree. I'm pretty happy with that. Pretty happy. Now it's time for me to think about putting a little grass or something in front there. So I'm just starting now with a little suggestion of grass here. And if you want to do that, that's fine. You don't have to. Now let's color in our church. So I'm coloring the roof kind of light, and then again making it darker on that one side so it gives a little suggestion of a shadow. It helps give it a little 3D look. Coloring in my doors, and you can color your doors whatever color you want. And again, let's have part of that a little bit darker. Darken in that side if we can. Just a little shadow there. Okay. And again, mine's not perfect. It's not perfectly straight. It's not perfectly even. And I'm okay with that. Even my 2 windows on either side of the door, they're not even the same size, but I'm okay with that. All right, now I thought I would make a suggestion of maybe some kind of a stained glass by just adding a few colors to the windows. So I'm putting some gold in first, yellow, and then I'm just going to drop in a little blue there just to give a suggestion. So someone might look at that and say, wow, those kind of look like church windows. No one's going to say, oh, I know exactly what that's a stained glass of. I'm not going to get that detailed. I'm just going to put a few colors in here, and I think it just looks kind of pretty. And I like that turquoise color. I think it's a beautiful color. So you can do that. You can make yours a little more detailed if you want. But I'm just going to put a suggestion there of some blue and some yellow, and it just looks like something's happening there. We don't know exactly what. All right, coloring in my roof at the bottom there of the building that extends back there. And then I'll color in my top of my other part of the building with that same color. Oh, and going around my doors, of course. So all the trim kind of looks the same color. Putting the trim in. I hope you don't get frustrated with this one. It's a little tricky, but if you slow down the video and stop it, then I think you'll be able to do it. And again, you don't have to make the tree. You can make whatever you want. Okay, now I'm just going to go around my windows a little bit because I see that I kind of went over some of my lines there. But you can stand back and look because we're really finished here. You can see, is there anything on yours that you want to fix up? I'm wondering if I should make my lawn a little more green. So I'm going to put in a few green strokes and then I'm finished. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you had to draw because it reminds us, it puts it in our brain what we've learned. And I think when you look at this, I want you to remember how dedicated Natasha was even as a little girl. She wasn't going to a beautiful church like this. She was going to the middle of the cold woods where she had to hide even to be baptized, and she had to, not let people know all the time that she was worshiping, or she could have been put in jail, but she was dedicated and she continued to worship God. And I pray that you will too.